about this patch, man. And I just wanted to know, who gave you permission to wear that patch?
Tommy. They ride in tight formation, engines thundering like a warning you feel in your chest before you ever see them. Leather vests, patched backs, hard stares. To some, they're symbols of freedom and rebellion. To law enforcement, they're something else entirely. Organized crime on wheels. They call themselves one-percenters, the riders who live outside the rules everyone else follows. They don't apologize for it. They don't hide it. For decades, these outlaw motorcycle clubs have built a reputation soaked in violence, money, and fear, drug trafficking, gun running, extortion, and murder stretching across state lines and international borders. Brotherhood is their currency, loyalty is their law, and betrayal is answered with blood. Behind the roar of the bikes is a shadow world most people never see. Secret meetings, lookouts on street corners, weapons hidden in cars and clubhouses, territories defended like battlefields. When rival clubs cross invisible lines, small towns can suddenly find themselves on the edge of a gang war. Tonight, we go inside that world. Not the myth, not the Hollywood version, but the real one, where police prepare for violence they know is coming, and where a single spark can turn a gathering of bikers into a crime scene. This isn't just about motorcycles, it's about power, control, and what happens when the law meets those who proudly live without it. Outlaw motorcycle clubs didn't begin as global crime syndicates. Their roots trace back to the aftermath of World War II, when thousands of young men returned home carrying adrenaline, trauma, and a deep restlessness that civilian life couldn't satisfy. Many had learned to live fast, take risks, and rely completely on the men beside them. When the war ended, motorcycles became a substitute for the battlefield. Loud, dangerous, and liberating. Riding together offered structure, identity, and brotherhood in a world that suddenly felt small. By the late 1940s, those loose riding groups began hardening into clubs. A turning point came in 1947 at a motorcycle rally in Hollister, California. What was meant to be a weekend gathering spiraled into chaos. Drunken brawls, reckless riding, and mass arrests. Media photos exaggerated the mayhem, but the damage was done. In response, the American Motorcycle Association famously stated that 99% of riders were law-abiding citizens. The remaining 1% embraced the label. They weren't embarrassed by it. They adopted it as a badge of honor. Out of that defiant identity grew the modern outlaw biker culture. In 1948, the first chapter of Hell's Angels was formed in California. What began as a local club quickly expanded into something far more powerful. The Angels developed a strict hierarchy, formal rules, and instantly recognizable symbols, most notably the winged death's head logo and the 1% diamond patch. Those symbols weren't decoration, they were warnings. As decades passed, rival clubs emerged and followed a similar blueprint. Groups like the Outlaws, Bandidos, Pagans, and later the Mongols spread across the United States and overseas. Together, these organizations came to be known by law enforcement as outlaw motorcycle gangs, or OMGs, a term the clubs themselves reject, insisting they are simply motorcycle clubs. The distinction, however, disappears when investigators follow the money. By the 1970s and 1980s, many of these clubs had evolved from rough social groups into highly organized criminal enterprises. Drug trafficking became a major revenue stream, particularly methamphetamine and cocaine. Gun smuggling, extortion, money laundering, and prostitution followed. Chapters operated like franchises, each controlling territory, collecting dues, and kicking profits up the chain. Violence wasn't random, it was strategic. Assaults, bombings, and murders enforced discipline and protected turf. Membership was never casual. To even be considered, a recruit first became a prospect, a status that could last more than a year. Prospects did the dirty work, guarding clubhouses, running errands, cleaning, serving drinks, and proving absolute obedience. They couldn't wear the full patch. They didn't have a voice. Every move was watched. One mistake could mean expulsion. One act of loyalty, especially violence on behalf of the club, could fast-track acceptance. To earn a full patch required a unanimous vote. Once granted, the patch wasn't just clothing. Members describe it as a transformation. Wearing club colors changes how the world treats you, and how you treat the world. Respect is demanded, not requested. Insults are answered. Authority is challenged. Many former members say the patch becomes their identity, eclipsing jobs, families, and even freedom. Law enforcement sees the same pattern everywhere these clubs operate. Tight internal discipline, absolute loyalty, and a deep hostility toward police. Officers aren't just outsiders, they're enemies. Many clubs explicitly forbid cooperation with law enforcement under any circumstances. Snitching is considered the ultimate betrayal, often punished with extreme violence. Even casual conversations with police can bring suspicion. Territory is sacred. Each club claims regions, sometimes entire states, as its own. When a rival attempts to move in, tensions escalate quickly. These conflicts don't always explode immediately. Sometimes they simmer for months, marked by intimidation, surveillance, and proxy violence through smaller affiliated clubs. But when they ignite, the results can be catastrophic. Public brawls, drive-by shootings, and murders in broad daylight. To ordinary citizens, these wars often appear sudden and senseless. To the clubs, they are inevitable. Honor, reputation, and power are constantly on the line. Backing down is seen as weakness. Weakness invites attack. By the time most communities realize what's happening, the groundwork has already been laid. Clubhouses are established, alliances are formed, weapons are cached, and law enforcement knows that once hundreds of patched members converge for a major event, like a national run or anniversary rally, the margin for error disappears. This is the foundation of the outlaw biker world. Brotherhood forged in defiance, financed by crime, and defended through violence. And once you understand how it begins, you can see why stopping it, without triggering even more bloodshed, is one of the most difficult challenges police face. To the outside world, outlaw motorcycle clubs look chaotic: leather, noise, intimidation, and raw aggression. But on the inside, they function with discipline that rivals corporate organizations or military units. Every chapter operates under a rigid hierarchy, and every member knows exactly where they stand. Presidents, vice presidents, sergeants-at-arms, treasurers, these aren't ceremonial titles. They come with authority, responsibility, and the power to order violence. At the top of each chapter sits the president, the final decision maker. Beneath him, the vice president enforces policy and often handles diplomacy with other clubs. The sergeant-at-arms is the enforcer, responsible for discipline, security, and retaliation. If someone needs to be handled, that order usually flows through him. Treasurers manage money, membership dues, bar revenue, and often proceeds from illegal activity. Nothing is casual. Everything is controlled. Chapters don't exist in isolation. They answer to regional leadership, and regional leaders answer to national or international officers. This structure allows clubs to expand without losing control. A decision made in one state can ripple across the country within hours. That's why law enforcement treats these organizations as transnational criminal networks, not local biker groups. Money is the lifeblood. While some members maintain legitimate jobs or businesses, many chapters rely heavily on organized crime. Drug trafficking remains the most profitable operation. Smaller affiliate clubs, sometimes called support or puppet clubs, are often used to move narcotics. If those lower-level members get arrested, the core leadership remains insulated. It's a buffer system designed to protect the top. Weapons are another constant: firearms, knives, hammers, bats, anything that can be used quickly and discarded easily. Members are trained to expect violence at all times, even during seemingly ordinary events, funerals, charity rides, social gatherings. There are usually armed vehicles nearby. Not every member carries a weapon, but everyone knows where to get one within seconds. What keeps the system intact isn't just fear, it's loyalty. Clubs cultivate an us versus them mindset that isolates members from the outside world. Law enforcement, the government, even ordinary civilians are framed as threats. The club becomes family. That emotional bond is powerful, especially for members who feel alienated elsewhere. Leaving the club isn't as simple as turning in a patch. For many, it's seen as betrayal, and betrayal can carry consequences long after departure. Recruitment has adapted with the times. While early outlaw clubs drew heavily from war veterans, modern chapters increasingly target younger men searching for identity, power, or belonging. Military backgrounds are still attractive. Discipline, combat experience, and comfort with violence are valuable traits. Some members are even recruited while still serving, forming bonds that carry over into civilian life. Public events are where risk peaks. Large gatherings, national runs, anniversaries, or memorial rides bring hundreds of members into a single area. Alcohol flows freely. Rival clubs monitor each other's movements. One insult, one perceived slight, can trigger chaos. Law enforcement knows this and responds with overwhelming presence: helicopters, surveillance teams, undercover officers, and interagency task forces. The goal isn't confrontation, it's deterrence. Surveillance is a delicate game. Too much pressure can provoke violence. Too little invites escalation. Officers document license plates, identify leaders, track movements, and quietly share intelligence across jurisdictions. Every photograph, every traffic stop, every brief interaction builds a larger picture. Often, police know exactly who is in town and why, but proving criminal activity is another matter entirely. Outlaw clubs are experts at staying just inside legal boundaries. Members may carry weapons legally, they may gather lawfully, they may refuse to answer questions without committing a crime. That gray zone is where they thrive. It frustrates communities who see the threat, but not the evidence. And it tests the patience of law enforcement tasked with preventing bloodshed rather than responding after it happens. Despite the intimidation, these clubs are not invincible. History shows that internal fractures, ego, greed, leadership disputes, often do more damage than police pressure alone. Rivalries within clubs can be as dangerous as conflicts between them. When alliances shift or trust erodes, violence follows. This constant tension is why authorities treat every major biker gathering as a potential flashpoint. One wrong calculation can turn a quiet town into a battlefield. And while many events pass without incident, the underlying reality never changes. Peace exists only as long as everyone agrees it does. Part 3 of 4. 800 words. When rival clubs begin moving at the same time, law enforcement knows the window for prevention is narrow. These groups don't announce their intentions publicly. There are no press releases, no social media posts laying out plans. Movement happens quietly. Small convoys, staggered arrivals, rented rooms booked under false names. By the time the threat becomes visible, it's often already late. What makes these situations especially dangerous is how quickly symbolism turns into violence. Territory isn't just geography, it's identity. A state rocker on a vest isn't decoration, it's a declaration of ownership. When another club wears its colors in that space without permission, it's seen as a direct challenge. That challenge demands a response, and in outlaw culture, backing down is rarely an option. Police strategy shifts dramatically once rival proximity is confirmed. The objective is simple in theory and brutally complex in practice. Keep the clubs separated. That means constant surveillance, traffic enforcement, visible patrols, and rapid intelligence sharing between agencies. Officers track not just where bikers are, but where they could be headed next. Border towns, highways, rest stops, and casinos become pressure points. Alcohol amplifies everything. At large biker events, drinking isn't incidental, it's central. Judgment erodes, tempers shorten, and bravado grows louder. A stare becomes an insult, a gesture becomes a provocation. Officers know that many large-scale biker brawls didn't start with strategy, but with ego fueled by liquor. That's why police often rely on saturation rather than confrontation. The presence of helicopters overhead, patrol cars lining streets, and officers on foot sends a message: you are being watched, and any move will be noticed. This isn't about arrests, it's about discouraging the first punch. Once violence starts, it spreads faster than police can contain it. Intelligence officers pay close attention to leadership movements. When high-ranking members arrive, it's rarely for social reasons alone. Leaders don't travel unless something matters. Negotiations, warnings, or preparation for conflict. If multiple senior figures from different chapters converge in one area, it signals that decisions are being made at the highest level. At the same time, lower-level members become unpredictable. Prospects and newer full-patch members are often eager to prove themselves. They're more likely to take risks, confront rivals, or ignore warnings. In many past clashes, violence erupted not because leadership ordered it, but because someone junior acted impulsively, forcing the rest to respond. Law enforcement also watches for alliances forming in real time. Clubs that normally keep their distance may suddenly appear together, drinking or riding side by side. That doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means coordination against a shared enemy. Other times, it's a temporary truce built on convenience rather than trust. Behind the scenes, police work phones relentlessly. Agencies call neighboring states, federal partners, and local departments, sharing plate numbers, names, and patterns. If a group is spotted moving toward a border, officers ahead of them are alerted. Roadblocks aren't announced, but traffic enforcement ramps up in key corridors. The goal is to slow movement, break momentum, and force groups to reconsider. The most dangerous moments come when clubs decide to flex. A convoy riding toward rival territory isn't always looking for a fight, but it's inviting one. Even a short incursion can spark retaliation that lasts years. Law enforcement intervenes early, pulling riders over, separating groups, and in some cases corralling them into controlled areas where they can be searched and questioned. These encounters are tense. Officers know they're dealing with individuals who are armed, trained, and often hostile. One wrong move, a misunderstood command, and aggressive tone can escalate the situation instantly. That's why many officers are trained specifically in biker gang interaction. Calm voice, clear instructions, no unnecessary provocation. Most of the time, it works. Groups back down, not out of respect for the law, but because the cost-benefit calculation changes. A public fight brings arrests, prison time, and unwanted attention from federal investigators. For organizations built on longevity, sometimes restraint is the smarter move. But restraint is never guaranteed. History shows that even after peaceful weekends, violence can erupt days or weeks later, far from cameras and crowds. A bar fight in another state, a roadside ambush, a targeted shooting. The conflict doesn't end, it just moves. By the time a major biker event concludes without bloodshed, police consider it a success, but they also know the deeper truth. Nothing was resolved, rivalries remain, grievances persist, and the next gathering is already being planned. For all the planning, the surveillance, and the temporary calm, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Outlaw motorcycle clubs are not fading away, they adapt. Every crackdown teaches them something new. Every arrest creates space for someone else to step up. Pressure doesn't dissolve these organizations, it reshapes them. What keeps these clubs alive isn't just crime or money, it's identity. For many members, the patch on their back is more than affiliation, it's purpose. It offers structure to people who feel alienated from society, rejected by institutions, or addicted to adrenaline. The club becomes family, loyalty replaces law, brotherhood replaces accountability. That's why traditional law enforcement strategies only go so far. Arresting one member rarely weakens the organization in the long term. Another fills the gap. Shutting down a clubhouse doesn't erase the network, it just forces meetings into quieter places. Even seizing logos and banning patches hasn't erased loyalty. Members don't stop believing because symbols are taken away, they simply adjust how they show it. Recruitment continues quietly. Veterans returning from combat zones, young men drawn to the image of power, individuals looking for belonging. These are the targets. The lifestyle promises freedom, respect, and brotherhood. What it rarely advertises is prison time, paranoia, and the constant threat of violence. By the time that reality sets in, leaving is no longer simple. Exiting an outlaw club isn't like quitting a job. It often means walking away from everyone you know, sometimes under threat. Some former members manage it, many don't. A few pay with their lives. The code doesn't forgive easily, especially when someone knows too much. From the outside, the public often sees only motorcycles rolling down highways or leather-clad riders gathering at bars. What they don't see is the quiet criminal economy operating underneath. Drug routes disguised as road trips, weapons moving state to state, smaller clubs acting as buffers, insulating major organizations from direct exposure. It's organized crime built on mobility. Law enforcement understands this reality better than most. That's why agencies don't work alone anymore. Local police, federal task forces, and international partners share intelligence constantly. Surveillance isn't about one weekend or one rally. It's about patterns over years, movements, alliances, internal fractures. Sometimes the goal isn't immediate arrests, but long-term disruption. Still, the balance is fragile. One miscalculation can turn surveillance into chaos. A single confrontation can spiral into retaliation across multiple states. Officers preparing for these events know they're not just protecting towns, they're preventing ripple effects that could spread far beyond a single location. And yet, despite all the danger, many of these gatherings end quietly. No fights, no bloodshed. On the surface, it looks like a victory for order, but beneath that calm, nothing fundamental has changed. Rivalries remain unresolved, power struggles continue internally, and the next event, the next run, the next border crossing is already on the horizon. This is why outlaw motorcycle clubs remain one of the most complex challenges in modern policing. They exist in a gray zone, visible but closed, public yet secretive, structured yet unpredictable. They don't need chaos to survive. They thrive in patience, waiting for moments when attention fades and opportunities return. For the communities caught in between, the impact can be lasting. Towns remember the weekends when hundreds of bikers arrived. Businesses remember the tension. Officers remember the nights spent watching shadows instead of sleeping. Even when nothing happens, the presence alone leaves a mark. And that's the paradox. When outlaw biker gangs do nothing, it's still something. It's a reminder that power doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it just waits, engines idling, until the next opportunity presents itself. If you found this breakdown insightful and want more deep dives into hidden worlds, criminal networks, and the realities behind the headlines, make sure you like this video. It helps it reach more people. Share it with anyone who thinks they already know how this world works. And subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because some stories don't end when the engines shut off. They're only getting started.